one playlist that's on this royalty-free YouTube channel that I follow, and they call it funky music / reggae, and it's got some really good like ska kind of dub stuff. So I guess I'll just keep playing that because I feel like everyone likes that one. At least I do. So I've missed you. I mean, I was here last Monday, but it feels like forever ago. Before I forget, I am going to have to cancel Thursday's stream. Nothing's wrong. The way that some family stuff worked out, I have to go pick my husband up. So, and because of other stuff, like the logistics, I have to be in the car driving like during stream time. So unfortunately, stuff happens and all good. So just remember that I'll change the schedule on here, and I've been really neglectful about putting that information out on the Facebook page. I got to do better. But anyway, so let's not forget about that. I'll remind you again at the end of the stream. I've done a bunch of random things, and I have kind of a few little things to show you that are fun. Double T and Babraham have yet another friend who's been added to the fold, and I have begun kind of the construction, sort of. It's early days, very early days, but I've sort of become started the construction of Babraham's like paradise. So there will be all of our little creatures can have I don't know, a party center, a party room. I don't know. I have all my miniature crap and I've been scheming and making sketches and things. So maybe by the end of the year we'll have a playhouse for all the miniatures that I show you guys, and hopefully you find as enchanting and luring as I do. But that said, I did a little traveling over this past weekend and end of last week, and I happened to stop by a Five Below. I'm pretty sure we have Five Belows everywhere in the U.S. I don't know about other places. I don't think they're international, but certainly other places have these kind of shops. They're a little bit more upscale than a dollar store, but not much. They get things. They do a lot of collaborations. They get a lot of things that are branded. So, Hello Kitty, Sanrio, and mostly I look at the toys. So that's why I have references to the toy brands. I think they do like cosmetics and things like that. They also have, but they're like the lower end price points of things. And, anyway, it's summer fun stuff for kids, pool, party, junk, and yes, it is a dangerous store. And it's still not like high quality things, but for kids, it's kind of like they're going to break stuff anyway. It's kind of like okay for that. And they have fun things like keychains and, I don't know, just candy and just that kind of stuff. Dollar store stuff, but maybe a little bit higher end. Anyway, my son and I stopped by there, and they have some kind of cute miniature things, but I was looking at the toys, and I do not watch the show Wednesday. Is it a Netflix show? I don't even know. Maybe it's a primetime show that shows on one of the other streaming. I don't know, because I don't watch it. I'm kind of not interested in it. But I am a huge fan of Charles Addams, the Addams Family, and kind of their whole canon up to the beginning of the 90s. So that was when the Addams Family movie and the Addams Family Values movies came out. And I kind of draw the line there in my fandom. And I'm allowed to do that, darn it. So I have a fair amount of knowledge up to that point. There have been other releases there. Apparently before the pandemic, I had no idea, and maybe I did and I just ignored it. There was an animated Addams Family thing that came out, I think in 2019, and big names. Like, it was big names that voiced all the characters. That's too modern. I like the old stuff. Long story short, one of my favorite characters besides Dr. Bombay is Cousin It. And because Cousin It is a character in the Wednesday show, I had a Cousin It doll. And I could not help myself. I was like, isn't he precious? He has apparently a little balayage to his hair. He is not the scruffy looking entity from the original series. But he's awfully cute. Cousin It is the best. Now, Wednesday, I believe the Wednesday show gave him a first name. I don't think he had a first name up to this point. I could be wrong. But the Wednesday gave him the name Ignatius It. I just prefer Cousin It. Now, I do love the stuff that he showed up in some of the cartoons from the 70s. And I think there might have been one later than the 70s one. And then, of course, the two movies that had Angelica Houston and Raul Julia are just, I love those. Those are great. In any event, he needs a larger hat. But look at this hat. It's a little brush. So he can brush his hair with his hat. But he needs a proper hat. His hat was originally not like this. It was originally a larger bowler hat. His glasses, I think, are okay. But I believe that they had like tinted lenses, not dark black lenses. So anyway, he is fabulous. I was braiding his hair earlier. I brushed it out. Real quick, you've wondered, I'm sure, if as I did, what is under the hair? It's horrifying. I don't know what they were thinking. I will show you, and then we're never going to look at this again. It is creepy. So this is what the underside looks like. There's these two creepy little hands and this like weird hairness. And I guess they did this so that if the hair is parted in any way, you know, you're not seeing something that's not sort of hair-like, but it's kind of creepy looking. So anyway, we're never going to look at that again. That's what's under there. There's a lot of interesting things about Cousin It, and one of my little projects that's just kind of in my head right now, and I also did some sketches, is to make him a Messerschmitt. I think it's a Messerschmitt K175, which was the little car he drove. A Messerschmitt is a German three-wheeled car. Messerschmitt also made, I think, small engine airplanes back mid-century. And so the body of these little three-wheel cars is kind of airplane-like. And if you look up Messerschmitt. It's Messerschmitt, I think. So if you Google that, you'll find these adorable little cars. And like literally, if they're tiny, they're so tiny. Like I think I'm too big of a person to actually fit in one. I think you need to be a small person to fit in one. But the roof of the car, like the whole roof of the car opens up. Like that's how you get in it. It looks like it is essentially like a pedal car. It's a moped. It's a moped with a car built around it. So anyway, that's what Cousin It drove. And I'm gonna make him one. if I can get the engineering of it together. So yes, let's see. Messerschmitt KR200 is one of them. I think it's 175 was the one that he actually drove, but there's a bunch of different ones. But they're so cute. Yes, cabin scooter. Yeah, if you look on the inside of it, I found some pictures online. If you look on the inside of it, the steering wheel is literally like bike handlebars. And I guess it has like I'm assuming it has some kind of accelerator, but it might literally be something like a motorcycle or a moped. So anyway, that's in my on my to-do list of things. Now the question is, will I ever get around to it? Maybe. It depends. But in the meantime, we have an adorable Cousin It. So some of the other things that I did this weekend and over the recent days, I finished this little guy. I decided there were votes. All Google says is it was the KR2000 or 200. Okay. I believe the Addams Family, the fandom wiki, I think has a different one. And if you Google that, KR, whatever, it's not important really, because it's just Messerschmitt is the important thing to know. But anyway, I got the little pin cushion. He's all cleaned up. He's all ready to be a pin cushion. I got a lot of different votes on the fabric, and I decided to go with the Harlequin. I thought that was really cute. So the little Frenchie bulldog he's all restored, I guess. I mean, essentially that's what I did, because I replaced his pincushion. I didn't conserve, I restored. So he is all done. I'm proud of that. He was a tiny project. Now this is going way back into the vault. But you guys might remember when I talked about some of my non-quilt, non-needlework related collections. I have way too many of them. But one of my, I don't know, sort of bigger mainstream collections are rubber-faced Rushton dolls. And I had showed you guys some of my dolls, and one set of them are the Zippy and Tippy dolls from the Howdy Doody show. They were the chimpanzees. Well, I finally got Tippy emptied out. She was full of some really gross stuffing, and I washed her. Look at her. Look at her beautiful fur. It's this like kind of a creamy golden color. I really wasn't expecting when I first soaked her, of course. It was truly like one of the OxyClean moments, though, because you just saw like all of a sudden her fur just started to glisten as I was, gentle agitation. And I think I just need to brush her, because I think her fur is pretty clean. I couldn't find any more stains. She's still a little damp because, like, I don't know, this fur is really dense. But yeah, I was so pleased with how she came out. So she's going to need her squeaker replaced. And I think I have one in a damaged Zippy that I bought to harvest shoes for my fire damaged Zippy. So next steps are to get her restuffed and get her brushed, and that shouldn't take too terribly long. And then I'm going to make her a new dress. And all the pictures I could find, her outfit was like a little shirt and kind of skirt thing. But I thought I would make her something a little more fashionable out of mid-century fabric, because I've got enough of it. So anyway, I'll have to keep you posted on my Zippy and Tippy restorations. I'm just really pleased with how she came out, and not really any paint loss or anything that wasn't already there. I have to say OxyClean. I don't know that I would necessarily clean everything with OxyClean, but something that's in like good, like there's no dry rot here. If there was any kind of, synthetics, if they've been subject to heat and light, if there's nylon involved, forget about it. Like, you cannot, you really can't conserve or restore nylon containing things once they've had heat and light. But she was in good condition that way. So, anyway, I'm excited. That was fun to find her, coming out well. Also, I mentioned this recently. It was the story I told you guys about going to Goodwill and to buy particular pieces of glass items that I have a project sketched out for. And the funny thing of finding one glass piece that I liked but wasn't sure I wanted to pay, $8 for it, and finding the exact same piece on the shelf below that was like less than half that price. It was, I really questioned the pricing, the pricing strategy of Goodwill. But anyway, I have those glass pieces, and I'm like, I need to get going on that project because, it's I've been thinking about it for a long time, and it's finally coming to fruition. So the other piece of it, besides those glass pieces, is going to be some smocked fabric. Now, smocking, there's two kinds of smocking I think of. There's those cool mid-century pillows that had that like interesting smocking kind of around the edges. They're sort of round pillows, and then in the center it kind of gathers together to like a big button in the center. And I may have showed pictures of this one time. My grandparents had these pillows, you know, on their couches and stuff. And the way you do the smocking, it creates this kind of crinkle design. And then there's your English smocking, which is basically like just the over and under, and that's this. Smocking is a very old tradition. Back when I was doing a lot of historical costuming, I examined a lot of black work. They would do black work, which is just stitching with black thread. They would do black work around the necklines of shirts and the cuffs. And so you could have these kind of like big voluminous things, but then they would be gathered, you know, at these important points by smocking. And it can create, like, depending on how loosely or tightly you work the smocking, you can end up with like almost an elastic sort of fabric, which is pretty cool. But the way that you get this is either very difficult or slightly expensive. So the very difficult and time-consuming way of doing this, I don't know if you can kind of see, I used this green thread in here, so you can kind of see it. If I pull it apart, I'll be able to see the threads in there. And you know, you could do this with a needle and thread if you lay your fabric out and you do the little tiny pin dots and then you stitch. You can get this. It will take you forever. You will make mistakes and you will be very angry. So that's the hard way. The easier way, but also the more fraught way and the pricey way, is to use a smocking machine, a pleater. Now there are some sewing machines that can do this, but not really the same kind of. These are some smaller pieces you can see. And you need to use like a very fine fabric for this. But so there are some sewing machines that can maybe do a couple of lines of pleating. If you have maybe 2 needles or 3 needle, you can do some gathering and pleating. But to get this kind of dense pleating on a strip of fabric, you need this. And there's a bunch of different brands of these. This is a reed pleater. My mother bought this back in the 80s, used, from a friend. And I have a secondary story. I will tell you about that just to give you a little bit of Stephanie Cake lore. But so this is several pieces that I pleated, and it got a little off kilter, so I think I might pull these out and replete them, because there was a part where like if you can kind of see it's the straight of grain got a little tipped as I was going too fast, I think. So you could kind of see these little bubbles. That's where the straight of grain went wonky and it kind of fed through a little crooked. You know, this is a simple machine. They are pricey though. Like, again, my mom bought this secondhand from a friend. And I honestly do not know how much she paid. My guess, it would be like no more than probably $30 or $40 at most. I mean, I'm thinking 80s and what my mother's budget was like back then. But today, if you were to buy one of these, they cost like $150 or more dollars. I just was, just doing some simple research to see. So I was really surprised. And, I guess it's these brass rollers that, I think are why they're expensive. I mean, it's a simple piece of machinery. It's like these little metal things on the end, and then you've got this little crank that turns the wheels, or these rollers. And then the part that's important, besides the rollers that crank the fabric through, are this row of needles. And I don't know if it's obvious to you, but these needles are set into the rollers. So you can kind of see them now. And they're each threaded, and you start your fabric going in this way, and you're cranking, and the fabric crimps through these rollers and it hits the needles. The needles are in there. They actually are curved. They have like, so they're like straight, bloop, straight. So you're feeding it towards the tips of the needles, and then because they go under the roller, they're curved. So this is a 16 slot pleater, or a 16 needle pleater. They also make, I think 24 and 32 needle pleaters. The needles are obscenely expensive. This one, my mom had my mom had one broken needle. So I ordered some new needles, and then I promptly broke another one. So I'm actually, these pleated pieces actually are missing 2 of the needles. So that for that reason also, I think I'm going to redo them. But anyway, these were practice pieces. And then these small pieces, I'm just going to kind of do some practice stitching on. I have never actually done any smocking. I watched my mother, and the smocking she was doing, so besides children's heirloom clothing, so, those little smocked dresses where it's like the whole bodice is smocked and it's got some little cute, like, bunnies and flowers, stitched in there. That's the kind of stuff she made. She made Easter eggs. And so that's what all of this is her scrap fabric for making those Easter eggs. And the way those worked is she would smock, a piece like this, and then do the stitching, and then you pull out these threads. And the stitching is what holds the pleats in then. And then you wrap this around like a styrofoam shape, like a styrofoam egg shape. And then you kind of deal with all this excess around the top and bottom, and you cover it up with bows and stuff. And then I think there's a version where you make a Christmas wreath, and it's using like a styrofoam, like a little styrofoam ring shape. I haven't seen those in a while, and now that Joanne's gone, I don't know where you get those anyway, Amazon, I'm sure. But anyway, that ring shape, you could also pleat this and then kind of stick this through the ring, and then you'd fold it up over the ring, and it's a cute Christmas thing. She would make it out of like a darker green, a forest green fabric, and then do smocking of like little leaves and berries. And then when you stitch it around the ring, it looks, like this really cute little wreath. And then the extra fabric, then I think, if I remember correctly, it was hemmed so that it kind of had like a little ruffle around the edge where these raw edges are. So those were the things people were smocking during the 80s to make. Lots of heirloom children clothing. So anyway, this is what I'm doing. And these will be combined with glass pieces, and you will find out what it looks like in the end. I just have like sketches now. I don't have much more, but I will share my progress here because this is new to me. So now the story I promised. The woman that my mom bought that from, she was friends with for, and is still friends with her. Like we run into her, at events and stuff. She still lives in my hometown. But my mom took a lot of classes from her. They did stuff together. She was like a cross stitch and smocking person. She did a lot of those kinds of things. Anyway, I started babysitting her kids when I was in high school. And I want to say, so I'm like 15, 16. Her kids were probably like 9 and 4, maybe, like those ages. I was a terrible babysitter. I hated children. I did not want to babysit, but it was the money. It was the summer job. It was my mother saying, no, you're not going to sit around all summer watching TV and eating ice cream on the couch. You're going to go do something, and you can go to camp. You can go babysit. And I was like, ugh, screw camp. Ugh, I'm 16. No way. So, okay, I'll babysit these kids. So now, as in my 40s, and now I'm a 50-plus-year-old woman, and I run into these kids' mother, and I mean, these kids now are in their 40s. I mean, but I run into her, and I still feel this sense of just shame. Because I'm like, I hope your kids turned out okay, because I was the worst babysitter. And when I borrowed the smocking machine from my mother, I saw on the box, she kept it packed in the box that it came in, where this woman's name had been written on the box, and my mom had crossed it out and written her own name. And that it just brought all that back to me the other day when I pulled the box out. I was like, oh my God. I hope the Howell children turned out all right. Because I'm sure they probably have this like memory of, wow, remember that summer we had the worst babysitter ever? Good times. All right, so what else did I want to show you guys? I think that's everything. That was all of the little miscellaneous. I wanted to really quickly look through this also. Miniature quilts. I stole this from my mother a few weeks ago, a month or so ago. Maybe it's been a couple months now. She had several issues of this, and it was released in April of 1991. And this was the premiere issue. And, you know, I mean, me and my miniatures, I thought, let's look at some tiny quilts. And so this one's got delightful dollhouse pillows, piecing tips for beginners, all kinds of stuff. I may have flipped through this at one point when I was talking about the stuff that's in here, but I don't think that we actually looked at it. So I thought we would flip through this. Just real quick to look at the pictures. And it's funny because some of these quilts, just in flipping through the magazine, I'm like, it's hard to tell that they're miniature quilts. Like, I don't think that they did this. I don't know. I mean, in some cases, I don't think they did a very good job of proving that it was a mini quilt. Like, if you're going to show something that's tiny, like, put it, or smaller, put it up against something that's big so we can, or, you know, that we understand the size of. That's why I always appreciate eBay sellers that use $1 or a ruler or a dime, so you know, like, how big the thing is you're looking at. So anyway, we'll look at this magazine. And then we have a new book. I kept asking you guys, what do you want me to read? I didn't get any suggestions. You guys may have been as clueless as me. Like, what should come next? But I had a little file. I had forgotten what I had in there, and I thought, let me look in there. Maybe I have. And actually, I was looking for the Mavis Fitz-Randolph book, and I still need to find that. But I fell across the book that I had been thinking about for a long time, had totally forgotten, and we're going to start it today. It's called The Secret of the Crazy Quilt by Florence Hightower. It was written in, I want to say it was 1971 or 72. It's as old as me. And it is a young adult's book. I have not really read any of it. I kind of skimmed it. I have a PDF version of it. It doesn't look terrible, but I don't know what the gist of it is. So we're going to find out. And again, it's a young adult book, so I don't think it's going to take us too terribly long. I want to say it's like 200 and some pages, but I mean, you know, think about a young adult book. It's the font's not that big and or not that small, and it's got pictures. So we'll take a look at that and start reading today. So I hope it's going to be interesting. It's a mystery. It's got it's historic, based on the description, and there's a crazy quilt at the heart of it. So, all right. And you know what? I did not say hello to everybody. I'm a bad cake. I know Robin's here. Thank you so much, Robin, for hanging out and kind of modding. You might see Robin had been a VIP because she was she was part of the bakery when we were doing Quilt Nerd with Mary Fons. So there's a bunch of you that kind of came over from there. I listed you as VIPs when you were here from my very first week of streams. And Robin has been kind of quasi-modding while Druid has been away, handling some personal stuff. And I realized the other day Robin couldn't actually mod something that happened. We had somebody show up and, they didn't really cause any trouble, but I was like, yeah, don't post crap. I didn't ask you for that, so please don't do that. And Robin was going to delete and then realized she didn't have modding rights. So I was like, oh, well, let me just give that to Robin because she's been so kind to be here. Well, you can't be a VIP and a mod at the same time. So I'm sorry, Robin. I had to knock you down a notch to mod. when Druid returns, I will make you a VIP again. So, but thank you, especially thank you to you guys who are VIPs. You've been here for a long time. Some of you are regulars. I know you're out there. If you miss it live, I know you're out there watching, and I appreciate you guys so much. So yeah, and yeah, feel free to say hi sometimes when you're here live. Yeah, Raven, don't you see you have a sword now? I was kind of bummed. Why can't somebody be a mod and a VIP? But I guess technically a mod has more power than a VIP. So anyway, another thing that I've been thinking about, I've been thinking of changing a few things, and I haven't landed on anything for sure. You know, Thursdays there's usually a lot more people here on Mondays than Thursdays. Attendance, live has been much lower, but it's summer. I know people are busy doing summer stuff, so I don't worry about that too much. But just the fact that Thursdays are usually a much smaller gang, and I'm not saying that I'm going to quit streaming on Thursdays, but I'm thinking about either doing a time change or maybe just doing co-working for a while. So if you guys have any thoughts about that, or if there's anything like format related that you're interested in, I know I've gotten a lot of requests to look at books, and while I don't have any problem, and we could certainly start doing this, is to just kind of dip into books, sort of the way Mary Fons did. I'm happy to do that, and I love to do that. I just, there's a limit to how much we can do just because of copyright. And, particularly still living authors, and, even if their books are out of print, there's still the opportunity for them to make income off of it, and it's just not cool to do that. So, there's a limit to that. And I do like the long slog through a book. So, I don't want to give that up. But anyway, those are just some things I'm thinking about, and I just wanted to mention to you. And if you guys have any thoughts, please let me know. You know where to find me on social media. And if you do want to send me an email and we haven't corresponded, send me an email at the Quilt Nerding email. So quiltnerding@gmail.com, and I can get back to you there. That's sort of our public email for Quilt Nerding. So, yeah, reach out to me there. And, if you don't do social media or don't want to hit me up on social media. So anyway, all that. Why don't we look at some miniature quilts? All right. So I got it all set up here. So let's see. Okay. Now I bumped my camera a bunch of times. I get to see all the craziness that's on my desk to make this. Okay. So to keep the glare off, I've created a little ramp. And you can see this is Miniature Quilts. And I like what they did here on the cover. You can see that these are small quilts because you have the frame of reference, right? You have the frame of reference of a deacon's bench and a chair and a shelf and some dolls and things. So I like that. But like I said, unfortunately, I think somewhere here in the middle, we're going to look at some quilts that I could not tell were tiny quilts. Check this out, you guys. Quilt in a Day with Eleanor Burns. We had mentioned, I think I've mentioned her a number of times over different things. She did some Underground Railroad quilt type stuff. Unless all of those are miniatures as well, right? I thought about that for a minute. I was like, is that a tiny shelf? No, I think this is a regular human-sized setup with small quilts. But anyway, Eleanor Burns, I mentioned her during Underground Railroad because she had an Underground Railroad like quilt pattern thing. And we also kind of touched on her, kind of in the systems of making quilts. We had Georgia Bone Steel and lap quilting, which is like kind of the modern version of those patchwork quilts. We have Eleanor Burns with some how to make quilts quickly. These are all of your, 80s and 90s television personalities. So I thought it was cool to see her. So we just have this whole list of patterns, and there's some features. So the person who was, let's see, I'm guessing her name is Patty Lilac Batchelder. So there she is. This is her editorial. Yeah, so I don't know how long this magazine was produced. I think my mom had bought a total of 3 of them. I think there's 2 more issues, maybe just 1 more issue. But let me know if you ever saw this magazine back in the 90s, if you ever read it, purchased it, whatever. I'd love to know. So anyway, this is cute. Look, this little bed. I've been in the market for a doll bed for a very long time. I want one of the fancy ones with the posters, the 4 posters. Probably those are late 1800s, early 1900s. This stuff, Depression era, mid-century, those are really cute too. But I really do want one of those, like those rope beds with the 4 posters. Sometimes they're super cheap. Sometimes they are not. It seems like that's when I always find them, is when they're $300 and not $25. But yeah, got my eyes open for those. So like, if you ever see one, let me know. So these are 2 small quilts, and then this is a tiny thing. I wonder how big that would be. So I'm picturing, a teddy bear. How big? So it's probably the size of a business card, maybe, the little print. Okay, so these are the ones where I'm like, small, huh? I cannot tell. Now this one says Petite Baltimore. This is actually 45 by 45 inches. So this is small, but not, I guess I would, back then, I guess it's a miniature, and I guess it's, 45 by 45. What is that, like 1/4, 1/6? I'm terrible at math, you guys, but imagining like a bed-size quilt would be 80. So I guess this is like half-sized. If a bed-size quilt is in like the 80 to 90 some inches size range, and this is 45 by 45, then I guess it's 1 to 2. I don't know. Do we consider this miniature today? I don't know. This is, to me, like, it's a mini quilt, or a small quilt, a wall hanging quilt. I don't know. When I think of miniatures, like the term miniature from a hobbyist perspective, yeah, 45-inch square might be a baby quilt, yeah. When I think of that miniatures perspective, I think of 1/6, 1/12. 1/4, that's still pretty big, in my opinion. So that's just as a miniatures hobbyist, not just miniature quilts, but all kinds of miniature crap. So, but I don't know, in the world of miniature quilts, like that's a good question to ask. Like, what constitutes a mini quilt, a miniature quilt? Is 45 inches square small enough? For some people, I guess it is. And what is a baby but a miniature person? So a baby quilt is a miniature, I guess. Now these, you can tell, are miniatures because of the quilting. You can see the quilting stitches create, something that's, yeah. And you know what? It just occurred to me. I did not finish saying hi to everybody. I got into the whole thing with Robin, and I did not say hi to B.of.D. Lee, who said hello at the beginning. So it is good to see you, friend. And I have to say, if you don't follow B.of.D. on Instagram, and I'm pretty sure your Instagram name is B.of.D. Lee, if I'm remembering correctly, he posted some like very sweet music recently that came across my feed. So check B.of.D. out. He's in a band. He plays good music. So check him out on Instagram. So I think, did I get everybody else? I don't think there was anybody else that said anything. I don't want to leave anybody out. I love you guys. Okay. So these are Oh, you know what? These are the blocks that are from here. I just realized that. Okay. So I guess it's the close-up that you can tell. They're definitely small. Love a cornucopia. It's very Baltimore album-ish. Okay. These, again, more quilts that I'm going. Without the frame of reference, I would never guess these are miniatures. This is another cool Baltimore album. This one's cute, a little album quilt. This one's kind of interesting. Look at this. Get it up a little bit closer, you can see. The applique has kind of multiple rings of color. I guess that this is a light orange, a dark orange, and then like maybe sort of a yellowish in the middle. So it kind of gives them this like ombre effect. And maybe that's just the photography. But oh, you're welcome, BD. It is. I'm always happy to see you here. And you know, this kind of stuff. These little narrow bits, those always look so difficult. And they're not impossible. They're slightly advanced, but there is a fantastic trick for making those. And I think I've probably mentioned this before. It's cut your bias strip, you fold it in half, you stitch it down on the line where you want that to be, you know, and then you trim the raw edge and then you fold it over. And you can get really narrow that way. You know, and it looks more difficult than it actually is. I mean, it does take a little bit of, you know, planning and detail orientation, but it's just one of those tricks that if you're into applique, you can really amaze people. And whether it's a full-sized bed quilt or these miniature things, you can really look talented if you master that. Okay, so Itty Bitty Amish Bars quilt. Now this, I could tell you, these pages are, I guarantee you, why my mother bought this magazine. Because this is the kind of stuff she was doing in the 80s and 90s. She made a lot of miniature Amish quilts based on things she saw. So she would study, you know, and she would take trips, you know, up to Pennsylvania with friends and to look at Amish quilts. And then, you know, do some recreations. And so I know she had done some stuff like this. She'd done the the big square with the even bigger square around it. And then, you know, getting as detailed as you possibly can with the quilting. But then again, you know, when it's this small, you know, your quilting can get lost if you know, you kind of have to adjust your pattern. And so that's a cable pattern that the Amish, the feathers and the cables, they loved. A cable pattern is definitely very Amish. And so here is where they're talking about the mini cable border. Now, when I glanced through this, I was like, gasp! This is how I have made my own cables before. I could not find a cable pattern that would fit the thing I made. I made a tiny little, it was a Ode to Harriet Powers quilt. And I couldn't figure out, you know, where to find something that would work. And so I was like, well, I guess I'm just going to have to kind of figure it out myself. And so I did this with paper. If only I had had this article, I wouldn't have had to dilly-dally around. I would have just read this article and been like, Eureka. So this is pretty cool. But basically, it's like you just have to, you know, figure out where it fits. And yeah, have to kind of worry about this corner bit. But otherwise, it's literally just kind of cutting this shape. And so what they say is you kind of got your measured piece and you're folding it up to however many cable bits you want. And then you're cutting it so then it looks like this sort of snaky piece. And then you fold it again to cut out the centers. And then you kind of refine it. So it's actually pretty easy if you have some scissor coordination. And then you would just trace this down, and then you'd have to add those little the little crosses, you know, where the cable crosses over itself. Kind of have to add that in your marking. But very nice, very nice. And let's see. They are talking about, so Patty Batchelder, so is the editor, she's talking about using freezer paper to do this. So easy peasy, right? I like the idea of using freezer paper kind of to secure patterns, because as long as you're working with 100% cotton, you don't have to worry about the freezer paper damaging it. You're more likely to have it damage your iron. But you could cut these things out and then just quickly press them down to the surface, do any marking, and then you just peel that off. You could reuse it for a couple times at least before it gets, you know, like it doesn't iron down very well. So yes, I love the freezer paper. Now look at this. Haha. Better Homes and Gardens Craft Books Club. Did anybody belong to one of these? This was like the Columbia Records sort of deal. This is a thing that we still deal with, this kind of stuff today, but I don't know that there's anything like specific like this that exists. So you can belong to any kind of you know, plan that just charges you every month and you get a thing, right? We all belong to those, and we forget about them sometimes and cost ourselves money. I'm just saying that because I've heard. Never happened to me. But this, gosh, I mean, how many people got into trouble with this kind of stuff? So you can pick 3 craft books for $1. And then you're going to be able to shop anytime you want. But they're going to send you the editor's choice every month, right? Yes, they'll send it to you automatically. And you'll pay, how much do they say you'll pay? I don't think the prices are in here. So the easiest club agreement. As a Crafts Club member, you can pick and choose what you want when you want. All you agree to buy is just 2 books or kits. Oh, this had kits. Over the next year from among the hundreds of selections you'll be offered. Shipping and handling charges added to all shipments. After that, your membership may be canceled by you or the Crafts Club at any time. So yeah, you'd have to remember to check off that you didn't want anything this month and send the card back in time. Otherwise, you get that book you didn't want. When I was in college, and maybe like right after college, I belonged to something like this. It wasn't craft books, but it was books. And it was one of those things, like I'd have to constantly keep up with the checking, the don't send me, and then remember like, oh crap, I have to buy 3 books or they're going to send me something and force me to buy it. So yeah, you get into trouble with these. And Columbia Records, oh God, my mother was like, she flipped out on me when I did the Columbia Records. I think I was probably in 9th grade, and she was like, what have you done? And you think about it, apparently, people were able to fight that when teenagers did the Columbia Records thing. Parents were able to fight it because like you can't make an agreement with a teenager like that. Especially if their parents didn't know. So hence why today we have must be 18 or older to purchase, because you can make a contract with an adult that you can't make with a child. So word to the wise. So Robin says, I think my mom signed up for that at one point, but canceled after she realized how much it would cost her and how little she'd use them. Yeah. So those 2 books you had to buy over the course of this thing were like full price. So, and you'd find out like the books that you got for $1 were really the only ones you wanted out of their entire inventory. Same thing with Columbia Records. We just don't have stuff like that anymore. It's funny. So Carol Scherer, this is interesting. So this is a Meet the Quilter, Meet the Artist kind of thing. They did this in Quilter's Newsletter magazine, where you'd meet a particular author, or I'm sorry, particular quilter or maker or author, I guess, but be like somebody's debut. And then this is Tips for Successful Piecing by Carol. And so this, I guess this is talking about how to sew small. But it looks kind of like some of this info is pretty much what you would expect for any kind of piecing, whether it's tiny or not. So, okay. Look at this. Oh, look at this, is cute. A little lighthouse quilt. I know a few people that collect lighthouse things. Here's a bow tie quilt. This is also Carol Scherer. You know, this is the era when rotary cutter stuff is becoming more common. And I'm looking to see, are the template pieces in here? Okay, so there are template pieces, and you have to add the seam allowance. Yeah, so we're not quite at complete rotary cutting instructions yet, but rotary cutters were definitely in the mix at this point. These are some really lovely quilts. Now, let's see. These are 14 by 14, 15 and a quarter by 15 and a quarter, 12 and a half by 16, and 17 and a quarter by 21 and a quarter. So this is a pineapple pattern. There, so you can see. That's really striking in black and white for sure. It's machine pieced, hand quilted with silk thread. That's another thing with silk thread. You can get like really tiny stitches, you know, really tiny needle. And you could do the kind of stitching that you would never consider doing on a large quilt because it would take you the rest of your life. But with the silk thread and like really tiny needle, you can get like really detailed. And I don't know if it's not showing up very well here, but there is this kind of they're sort of fans, and it's not showing up at all, I can tell. But anyway, there's these fans around the border. They're kind of like fan, and then the next fan is upside down, so they kind of lock together. But it looks like for something that's 14 by 14, and then to have this like really detailed, it's clear that she used a very fine thread and a very fine needle. If you try to quilt with cotton thread that is that fine, you know, they do make it like 80 weight, and I think there may be even a higher one than that, but 80 weight is pretty fine. That's good for applique, but you would never want to quilt with it because it would break immediately. Like just pulling it, like the pulling it through the fabric and the batting would put so much friction on that thin piece of thread. And you know, cotton does not have as long fibers as, you know, other types of like linen. Linen's got a longer fiber. Even wool in some cases has a much longer fiber than cotton. So it can shred a lot easier. I mean, if you've ever tried to use a really long piece of thread just to save yourself from having to thread a needle, and then by the time you get about halfway, the thread is shredding. So long story short, that's why the silk thread makes a lot of sense, because you can get that like really dense, tiny, and you know, it's not a big thick thread. I love this one. This is very cool. Very simple. I mean, all of this is based on Amish quilts, so. Okay. Reviews. Okay, so this is about all sorts of different books. We have a couple of little patchwork, small things. A scrappy cracker quilt. I'm assuming that this is about cracker as in either a cracker, like the thing that, you know, they're very ubiquitous in British Christmas stuff, but also I think lots of people here in the States also do crackers. You pull the ends, it snaps, it opens up, there's a tissue paper crown and some little toys and a joke inside. I don't know if that's what this means, cracker, or if we're talking about cracker like a saltine, or if we're talking about cracker like trashy white people. I jest. I kind of feel like it's a Christmas cracker. I don't see anything in here that says like exactly what we're talking about here, but this has rotary cutting instructions. Is look, it says use a plastic ruler and rotary cutter, trim the piece blocks. So it seems like yeah, this is all rotary cutter cutting. Oh, here's a snowball quilt. And this, I think, this is the quilt that's in the bear bed, because you can see the snowballs. Also very cute and simple, you know. I mean, this looks fancy, but look how small those pieces are. And we have a flower garden doll quilt. Now let's see. Oh yes, this is having you. This is not English paper piecing. This is having you do these terrible Y seams. Oh lordy, nobody does them that way anymore. Hearts and 9-patch. There's a lot of instructions for just a few quilts. Oh wow, look at these little pieces. No, I mean, I guess that's it. That's an inch by finishing. Yeah, that's finishing at 3/4 of an inch. Sometimes I can't eyeball very well. Yeah, so it's a little more than an inch square, and it's finishing at little less than an inch. You can see the schematics here for all of these pieces. Dancing bear's paws. I wonder what it is that makes them dance. I guess because they're this setting. We've got the small one and then the big one on the outside. This one, I think this one's template based and not rotary cutter based. Look at this. Ooh, this is my style. This is some beautiful applique. There's those teeny tiny little bits. And then, okay, there's a outer border, I guess, that's pieced. And then you've got these prairie point kind of situation. Like a basket. The Crown of Thorns quilt. Okay, so that's that Amish quilt. I'm not recognizing really many of the names in here. These must have been people that were focused on miniature quilts, or maybe just were maybe not advertised or submitting to the big name stuff like Quilters Newsletter magazine. These are interesting how they've included these little pieces around the advertisers. I guess because this is the initial issue, right? This is the premiere issue. Maybe they didn't have as many advertisers, and so they interspersed with these little motifs. That's pretty cool. That's kind of a nice way to to work those into some empty space here. Oh, look at this one. It's a little heart and hand. Oh, I like that. And a little spider web. That's pretty cool too. Little tulips. Okay. Little neckties. Oh, this is interesting. And I don't know that I've heard this called a necktie. I mean, these are, to me, this is a Dresden plate, or even a fan, grandmother's fan. Sometimes I've seen that, but I guess grandmother's fan is when it's the quarter of it. But little neckties, that's interesting. Maybe that's an older term for it. Or maybe it's just this quilter decided to call it that. Teddy bear paws quilt. Okay. I'm wondering, let's see. Is this just, oh, okay. I was thinking maybe this thing's a difficulty meter, but I think this is just a little decorative device. But wouldn't that be interesting if they used they put hearts on that, the number of them for the difficulty meter? Okay, now this is a miniature Dresden plate. Okay. Is it because of is it a necktie because it's long, and it's a Dresden plate because it's squatty? Huh. That's weird. I mean, we're looking at... This is longer and thinner. This is shorter and squattier. But to me, it's the same thing. Huh. Okay. Patchwork Pines miniature. Okay, this one's cool. This one's fun. This is the trees. Okay, so these are your inner pieces, and then this is the pieces for the pines. I'm starting to glance here at the variety of advertisements, and I'm not recognizing anything like that's really jumping out at me as anybody I know, but nonetheless. Oh, here's an interesting one about photographing mini quilts. This is suggestions. Use a standard lens, such as a 55mm. Do not use a wide-angle lens because the strobe coverage is designed for a standard lens only and dark edges will result. Okay. Yeah, so that's those pictures that you've seen that are kind of like, they look like a sort of a vintage, like a vignette type thing, and the kind of dark edges. I mean, how many people have used that as a filter because you like that look? That's funny. But yes, if you're trying to photograph something that's square and you're going to end up with that dark, I didn't know that's why. With 35mm cameras, I did not know that was why. Lighting is important, of course. We know this. For shooting quilts on a bed, position the camera so you are at an angle above the bed to see as much of the quilt as possible, but still have a well-designed shot. Using props well can add to the shot's chances for publication. I think these are still very good. This is very good advice. Let's see. Best results are achieved with 35mm camera. Indoor balanced film for indoor shots. Well, we don't have to worry about that. We don't use film anymore. Unless you do. Use outdoor film with a strobe. Lighting. For head-on views, a strobe may white out the shadows for the quilting stitches. Yes, this is a problem that I've often had, is that because of the surface of a quilt, you know, is so very crinkly. Your close-ups, you can get, like, you could see that definition really nice, but you pull back any and you've got bright light on it, it's gonna completely blow out all of those stitches, and you're just gonna kind of see this sort of flat, colorless look. I have definitely had that problem. Do not stand at an extreme angle because of shadow. I'm sorry, no, because of, oh, the quilt will not be square. Ha! Yes, that's that keystone situation, which you can actually fix if it's not too terribly bad. If you take pictures with your phone, as long as you have a fairly modern phone, if you're not on a flip phone, if you're on a smartphone, you should have, you know, just a very simple, in the editing, it has a thing where they're almost like parallelograms, and you just pick whether it's a side to side or a top to bottom, and you can tilt the quilt and get it square. If that angle is too extreme, you're gonna get, it's kind of funny looking, but with AI, oh my god, you guys, it'll really fix it for you. And it's getting better every day, so. Okay. Full-size patterns for the lighthouse. Oh, but you gotta add seam allowance. This is actually pretty big, considering, for baskets. I mean, that's almost like full-size quilt to me. Don't let a bear hold the balloons. This is shown on page 66, so let's see, what is that? That is this. Don't Let a Bear Hold the Balloons by Carol A. Prisk of Negaunee, Michigan. So I guess the bear has let the balloons go. That's cute. So here are the pieces for that. This little applique bear. Oh, the bears. The bears in the 80s and 90s. My mom still collects teddy bears, and she's got some really cool ones. But I also, you know, Cutesy bears. I've seen enough of them in my lifetime. Oh my goodness, look at this. So this is a rabbit's paw quilt. So what was that one? That was 18. Oh, this is one of the Amish quilts, I think. Let's see, page 18, rabbit's paw. That's this. And this one is 17 and a quarter by 21 and a quarter, so it's a little bit bigger than these other ones. But look at how you make these. So you're doing these little half square triangle units, and then you're putting these together to make that, and then you put those together to make this. So yeah, that's getting into some tiny bits. 1 1/4 inch squares. Yeah. It's an interesting challenge for sure. Okay, what is this? Collectible pins for 1991. Yeah, people loved the pins back then just as much as they do today. Then we have a fabric fading kit. Fabric fading kit to get that antique look. Booklet also included with hints and suggestions for dyeing with tea. Okay, I wonder what it is. I wonder if it's like some kind of like bleach compound. Pictures to fabric transfer gel. Okay, this was the stuff. It's basically just gel medium. Gel medium is the base for acrylic paint. So it's like a clear stuff, clear compound that with acrylic paint you add pigment to and makes acrylic paint. Without that acrylic paint, you have this clear gel stuff. Mod Podge is sort of similar, but you paint it on paper and then you let it dry, and then you soak the paper, and the paper gets wet, and then you very gently rub the paper off, and then you can like iron this stuff down to your fabric. I think that's what this one is. If it's not, that's a similar product that I used back then, actually when I was in art school. Heirloom label for signing your quilt. Look at this. Very pretty. It's a silkscreen label. You can see that. My mom is actually getting ready to spin up her writing on quilts class again. She taught this class around this time period in the late 80s and early 90s, and sort of back when, you know, all of the craft of the late 1800s was really interesting to people, and so signature quilts and signing on quilts and the little tiny drawings and things were so popular to try to recreate. And she developed a class where she was teaching it using modern materials. So, you know, forget about your metal nibbed pens or your goose quills. You use Pigma pens, and you iron your fabric down to freezer paper, and use light boxes and things like that, and you can get this look of that stuff, you know, that antique stuff, without having to be a super artist or, you know, have all of that old school type of pen and ink kind of stuff. So she's spinning that class up again. She's going to teach it, I think, for a guild coming up, but if I can convince her, she might teach it for me. So if it's something that you might be interested in, please let me know. I will pass it along to her to convince her to teach it here on the stream, or perhaps for a little paid version of it. Do you know how hard it is to find stencils like this anymore, these plastic stencils? I don't know why I thought I could walk into one of my local quilt shops and they'd still have these. I went to one of the quilt shops that I think is kind of more traditional. This has been a year or two ago. And I truly thought I would still see this stuff. And I don't know what I was thinking. I was like, you know, they don't sell this stuff anymore. Oh, these look like fun things. What is this? Susan McElvey. She is one of the well-known people. She's deceased. But she was very, very popular and well-known for writing on quilts. I have this book. And, oh, it came packaged with a permanent fine line marker for writing on quilts. It's 94 pages, and in 1991, it cost $16.50. That was a big thing. Ellie Sienkiewicz's book, Baltimore Album Quilts, Baltimore Beauties and Beyond, $23.95. I mean, this is what these books cost now through Amazon. So you can imagine, mail ordering or buying these things at a local quilt shop. They cost the same back then, and that was more expensive back then. So yeah, it's interesting to see that kind of pricing. Jill and I were actually just talking this morning about, kind of the changes since the 80s and 90s in the cost of stuff. Miniature to masterpiece. This is interesting. Nancy Johnson's Cerebro. But yeah, the change from back then to now, and what expectations are as far as value, cost, all of that thing. Things have changed, yet things have stayed the same. It's so interesting. Quilting is an expensive hobby, if it's your hobby. I think there's many, many, many ways to quilt inexpensively. But it's also just as easy to get caught up in that whole, I need all of the bells and whistles. I need all of the things that make quilting easier. But if you think about it, you think about our ancestors, they were quilting with nothing. They were quilting with cut up clothes and cardboard, a pencil, some scissors, a needle and thread, an iron. If they had a sewing machine, they were lucky, So it's really interesting to me that, quilting is such an expensive hobby today, whereas, historically it wasn't necessarily. I mean, we could very well go back to making quilts that way. Many, many of us do. I use so much salvage stuff. I feel like my quilting is not terribly costly unless there's something very specific I want to go after. So anyway, it's just it's an interesting thing to think about and just look at the trends and all that. So these are a quilter's dollhouse. Look at this. This is definitely a dollhouse. So you've got a little tiny basket here. Look at these little pillows. Oh my gosh, they're so cute. They look so real, big sized. They are obviously real, but big sized. And then look at this little couch. Okay, how many people had a couch like that in the 90s? Raise your hand. A big buffalo. You love the sag on the couch, right? That's probably because of how it was made, but it also, certainly at my house, I got a saggy couch. But yeah, I'm trying to think. My mom had a chair, I think, upholstered like this, and it's that homespun. Waverly, I guess, probably made a ton of it, but oh my gosh, that is so cute. So let's see, we've got a 9-patch pillow, log cabin pillow tops. So that says shown on either end of the sofa. So I guess this is kind of a log. I guess these are both log cabin because they're log cabining their way around a central medallion thing. A candle wicked pillow top, a posy pillow top. So I guess that's this in the middle. Ah, look at that, so cute. Oh, cross stitch pillow top. How adorable. Other littles in the photo include the little knitting bag made on needlepoint plastic. The knitting needles are thin nails. You really can't see them in there, but there's two little knitting needles sticking out of a little ball of yarn. Oh, how adorable. The painting over the sofa is by Anne Killam Designs, purchased in a gift shop. Look in the craft section of McCall Simplicity, etc. pattern books for dollhouse furniture patterns. Oh. Did we see these things? I mean, I'm trying to think. I cannot say that I have looked at a Big Four pattern company book in 4 or 5 years. I think the last time I looked was when I worked at Joanne, or maybe a little bit after that, after I left there. And I think like the crafty type stuff was all, I think there might have still been maybe a Barbie, one or two Barbie patterns, definitely American Dolls. But yeah, I'm blanking on dollhouse furniture. So I'm wondering, let's see, my daughter and I play with the dollhouse I built 10 years ago. I want to fill the attic with tiny eclectic things. Ah! Yes. Yeah, cosplay and costumes. Yes, absolutely. Those were a big thing. So that's interesting. We're going to have to look, you guys. We're going to have to see if McCall's or Simplicity, like, what did their dollhouse furniture patterns look like? I'm going to assume that they're this kind of thing. That's what this is. Had to have been a pattern. But I mean, you know, it's clearly made in the 80s or 90s because of that plaid fabric. Interesting. Okay. I'm sure I saw those things back then. I'm not remembering. Okay. Second annual Quilt America presents. Let's see what. Joe Cunningham, Gwen Marsden, Paul Pilgrim, Gerald Roy, Peggy Schaefer. Those are all names. Those are big names that we still talk about today. You know, and I gotta say, I sometimes feel bad for reading these names off and then like really like pointing out some of them, because I feel bad for the people that, you know, never got to be these household names, or were household names then but not now. I wish in many ways we could uplift those other people too. But gosh, you know, the legacy of finding those people and sometimes the things they created, you know, it's difficult. Like, as an example, oh gosh, Robin says there are a lot of McCall's dollhouse patterns. Okay. After we get off here, you guys, I'm going to go look. Because, you know, I can't help myself. If I can find stuff that Babraham can decorate with, you know, I'm going to find it. But anyway, so, you know, these people, you know, what I was going to say is, I mean, you think about like a perfect example, McCall's patterns. I have purchased a couple of McCall's crewel work patterns, and not because I do crewel work, but because I'm 90% certain they are Florence Pito patterns. They do not have her name on them at all. And, you know, I know that like McCall's Simplicity, those that when, you know, as we get closer to today, they would do, you know, they would give the copyright information for the designer, and in some cases would literally feature the designer. I know Mimi G was somebody, she made, I don't know if you know who she is, but she made or makes lots of very cool contemporary clothing, but her patterns were, you know, featured her all over them. So, you know, today they're doing the stuff that we would expect out of copyrights. And, you know, I assume that now that Michaels has bought that stuff, right? I know, but Michaels bought the fabric. Did they also buy the pattern stuff? I can't remember now. But whatever is happening with the big four, let's hope they keep that. They keep, you know, giving people credit if they still are around. But at this point, you know, you may have had things that had people's info on it, and they might not have. So that was my long story of saying that. This one's pretty neat. These are miniature flower gardens again. That one is pretty neat though, the way it's shaped. It's kind of a Seven Sisters kind of vibe, even though that's not what this is, but it's got that vibe to it. Oh, look at these. Okay, so my mom had a pattern for a bunny kind of thing. She also had collections of these types of little doodads. Little tchotchkes. As the British call it, tat, which is a nice way of saying crap. Okay, so we're gonna wrap up here. Here is the Scrappy Cracker quilt. I guess are going for that, I guess, holiday cracker or firecracker kind of look, I guess. I don't know. And then this is the miniature Dresden. And then here's that really pretty bouquet, basket bouquet. And, oh, okay, so it really wasn't piecing around the edge. It was just these prairie points that they were showing. So those prairie points are stitched in, like as a flange. So they would be loose. And look at these. Oh, it's a miniature dollhouse. Oh, you thought firecrackers, Robin? Yeah, I guess because it's not red, white, and blue. I guess my creative mind didn't go there. But you might be right. I think you could be right that it's sort of a take on that. But look at this. Okay, what is this? It looks like I guess it's a miniature quilt. First I thought might be a pillow. But it's either blocks. Memories of childhood. Okay, I think this might be blocks. Maybe not. Her quilt is memories of childhood. Okay. Yeah, I guess this is just a singular. Or is it? No. In any event. Oh, you glanced up from stitching and that's what you saw. So this, look at the little rooms. And then I guess this is the other side. You've got the house. And then you flip the quilt over and you got this. Ah, that is so brilliant. And I think that this is everything. I think this binding looks kind of weird at the top because I think that's the rod pocket in there. It's kind of giving it that rounded look. I think that's why I was confused. I was thinking maybe it was a kind of a cutout, but I think it's because of the rod pocket. Oh, that is so adorable. This little clapboard house. There's a house across the street from me that looks a lot like this. Their door's right here though. Adorable. Okay, and we looked at bears. Then the bear's got his own quilt. His own bear's paw quilt. Yeah, of course he had to have a quilt. Oh, look at these. These are a bunch of the quilts too. On a quilt ladder. I love that. Usually the things we put on quilt ladders are big folded up quilts. That's very cute too, those little baskets. All right. Well, oh gosh, I spent a lot of time on that. So that was miniature quilts, you guys. Really cute publication. I wonder, let's see, it came out 4 times a year and it was $10. Oh, for 4 issues it was $10. Now off the newsstand it was $3.50. So $3.50 an issue. And at $10 then that's $2.50 an issue if you subscribed. So I think my mom has that issue. I think I remember seeing that one in the stack. So we'll have to look at that one another time. But yeah, again, if anybody has seen this magazine out there, other issues of it, if it published for a while, I don't know. I really and truly don't know. I haven't done any research to find out much about it. So, all right. I hope you enjoyed that jaunt through some miniature quilts that looked miniature and some other miniature quilts that didn't look so miniature at all. Okay, so now let me get my setup here for looking at this book. Let me see. Okay. I'm gonna pull up the pictures, and there's not tons and tons and tons of pictures. But there's enough that you'll have something to look at, so I can put it up on the screen. But before we do that, let me read to you what this book is about. It says, prospects were totally grim for the summer of 1926 as Jerry, that's short for Jerusha, and her younger brother Freddie headed for the Haven to stay with grandfather and Aunt Edith. The Haven was a huge old house overlooking the ocean on the coast of Massachusetts. So I'm wondering if this is Cape Cod-ish. And when grandmother was alive, it had been a wonderful place. Now she was dead, and with her went the warmth and laughter of all the other summers. But the Haven held a secret. The discovery of an old quilt, ugly and somehow frightening, provided a look into the past and slowly revealed a story of evil, a story locked away for years in the mind of Jerry's grandmother. Many things happened that summer. None of them were dull. There were also many mysteries, and not all of them were solved. The story of the Crazy Quilt is about prohibition and rum running, and a shootout in the cove, clandestine activities, and strange disappearances. It's about a time that everyone involved would remember and wonder about for years to follow. And its story isn't finished until 1943, when, through their combined narratives, Jerry and her Aunt Edith finally try to sort out the facts and find out what really happened that eventful summer. Gasp! So, that is what this is about. And like I said, this is a young adult book. So I don't think it's going to take us too terribly long to read. Whoops. Let's see. Okay. Let me get all squared away here. Ad break is starting. Sorry, guys. There we go. All right, so herein lies the front of the book. I see it's this scary looking house, maybe. There's this profile of a child. We've got these children playing on the shore, I guess. The photo, it's illustrated by Beth and Joe Crush, and they were very 1970s oriented, because this looks like very 1970s. It does not strike me at all as 1920s or 1940s, which is the two time periods in this. So we will roll with it. So, as I said, this book was written by Florence Hightower, and you can see that here, illustrated by Beth and Joe Crush, and it was published by Houghton Mifflin Company, Boston, 1972. So this book is actually a year older than me. Florence Hightower also wrote Dark Horse of Woodfield, Fair Weather Forecast, The Ghost of Follansbee Folly, and Mrs. Wappinger's Secret. So those, from what I did like a real quick look at who she was, and apparently like she actually had, like, she has her papers at a university. Like, she was not some fly-by-night author, but I think she only published these 5 books, and they were, and there might have been one book after this one, but they were mostly like mysteries, and it seems to be kind of like on the Nancy Drew sort of level to me. So I thought, I think I would like that. So, all right, here we go. Show you guys all the pictures. Okay, I wanted to pull this one up. So, what we are reading again is The Secret of the Crazy Quilt by Florence Hightower, 1972. And we are starting here. Oh, bear with me, guys. I'm sorry. I don't have all of my screens up. Yeah, Robin says I love that cover. Yeah, the cover's pretty cool. I mean, it just reminds me of, like, you know, books from the 70s. I read tons of these books when I was a kid. So, okay, I'm trying to get my screen over here set up. I should have plugged in my other screen. Okay, so the chapters don't have numbers, so we're just going to have to go with that. So we start off with Jerusha's narrative. Arrival. I was 13 and Freddie was 8, in June 1926 when we traveled alone from Chicago to Sewell, Massachusetts. We had made the trip lots of times before, but always with our parents. I was worried I would miss a connection right up until we had made the last change at Houghton Junction. Gosh, guys, I am not reading well today. We had made the last change at Houghton Junction and gotten on the 5:32 p.m. local to Sewell. So Sewell, Massachusetts. Jill is not here today to my knowledge. She would know exactly where Sewell is. I don't know. If you guys know, let us know. I'm assuming it's on the coast. It's probably near Cape Cod. Massachusetts is a big state, but coastal stuff, it's pretty small. So, all right, Sewell. And I'm assuming the 532 is the Amtrak. We stashed our overnight cases in the luggage rack. Our trunk had been sent ahead. Turned one seat back to front, and with a whole double seat each, spread ourselves out, feet up facing each other. We made it, I said, and I didn't even get a nosebleed. I was subject to nosebleeds, always at embarrassing times and places. I thought you'd have one for sure when we couldn't find your pocketbook on the sleeper, Freddie giggled. I was waiting for it to pour all over the porter when he fished the pocketbook out from under the bunk and gave it to you. I snatched up the pocketbook from the seat beside me and clamped it between my knees so I wouldn't lose it again. I wasn't used to carrying a pocketbook. I always carried money, when I had any, in my bloomer leg. Okay, remember, this is supposed to be 1926. So, money in a bloomer leg. All right. Now, looking at these swimsuits on these children, I don't know, like, what does a child's swimsuit look like in the 20s? Like, I could believe this little boy is wearing a 1920s swimsuit. I don't know about the girl. I don't know. I feel like the 1920s, they were still wearing, like, little swim dresses. So, all right. Freddie jabbed his finger at the pocketbook. The gum, he shouted. Remember the gum. We're safe on the train and nothing to worry about. You promised. I rummaged 2 sticks of oh boy gum out of the pocketbook and gave one to Freddie. Practice while you can, I said. It's probably your last chance this summer. You mean because of Aunt Edith? Grandma wouldn't have minded. I was about to tear the wrapper off my own stick of oh boy when that reminder that Grandma wasn't in Sewell, was in fact dead, hit me in the stomach. I didn't want any gum. Here, I handed mine to Freddie. Gee, Jerry, thanks. It was a lot easier to practice bubbles with 2 sticks than 1. Gee, you're swell. Are you sure you're all right? Freddie looked at my nose. I nodded and turned to the window so he wouldn't see the tears that were welling in my eyes. I hadn't wanted to come to Sewell that summer without my parents, but Mama's lungs were kicking up again. If your mother doesn't have complete rest in a sanatorium in the mountains this summer, Daddy had said, she might never get well. I wonder if it's tuberculosis. Isn't that tuberculosis was still going on in the 20s? I can't pay her bills and send you and Freddie to camp too. And I can't let the 2 of you kick around Chicago all summer in the heat, exposed to scarlet fever and infantile paralysis and heaven knows what all. Infantile paralysis, I think, was polio, right? Scarlet fever, of course. I know that was a big deal back then. You know how your mother worries. Her rest in the mountains wouldn't do her any good at all. Edith has asked you both to Sewell. She needs you to help her cheer up Grandpa. He's been very low since Grandma died. She needs Freddie, I said, not me. Daddy rubbed his forehead. I had an inspiration. I won't kick around, I said. I'll stay indoors and keep house for you. I'll cook and clean and sew and bring you your slippers. I had just read Little Women. I could see myself bustling around in a hoop skirt. Freddie can go to Sewell and cheer up Grandpa. I'll stay home and take care of you. Daddy sighed. You're a dear for wanting to help me, but I can take care of myself. It's Freddie who'll need you in Sewell. Edith has a lot to do now. She's very serious and conscientious, and she doesn't know how to play with children the way Grandma did. Sometimes, Mama thinks, she's a little too strict, as though she were still in the classroom. Mama wants you to go to Sewell, not to protect Freddie from Edith, not exactly that, but so he won't be homesick or unhappy. You've got to be Grandma and Mama and me for Freddie. It's a lot to ask of you, but we think you can do it. And it's important for Mama and Freddie both. I had been flattered by my parents' high opinion of me and exhilarated by the prospect of telling Aunt Edith off when she needed it. I had agreed to go to Sewell with Freddie, but now, as the train jogged on and it occurred to me that already Aunt Edith was stepping into the automobile of whichever lucky beau she had chosen to drive her to the station to meet us, my courage began to ebb. How beautiful Aunt Edith was, like Pola Negri. I don't know who that is. Is that somebody famous from the 20s, or is that somebody that this author made up? I don't know. So, like Pola Negri, and clever and learned, and for all her strictness, I had to admit, reasonable and fair. How I wished I looked like her instead of being a skinny, dirty blonde with a pug nose and freckles. And size 8 shoes. How I wished I could pay attention in school and get good marks instead of going off into daydreams. Neither would I have minded being followed around, like her, by a string of admiring beaux who thought I was wonderful even when I was mean to them. Most of all, though, I wished my dear, plump grandma, who always thought I was wonderful, was meeting me at Sewell Station as she always had done before. I wiped away a tear that had dribbled out of my eye. Freddie needed me, I told myself. Freddie loved me. Freddie thought I was pretty wonderful, and I had to keep cheerful so I could protect him from Aunt Edith. Resolutely, I turned my thoughts to cheerful things about Sewell and Haskell's Hill and the Haven, which was the name of my grandparents' house. Things that would be the way they had always been, even though Grandma was gone. At the foot of Haskell's Hill, for instance, was Haskell's Cove. At low tide, it was more mud than water, though the channel was always deep and loaded with clams. Freddie and I would put on our bathing suits and old sneakers, get the clam hooks and the clam basket from the shed, and follow our secret path down to the cove. Our secret path was one great-grandfather Haskell had used when he ran his shipyard at the cove. The arbor vitae hedge he had planted to screen the house and garden from the east wind had grown up into a miniature forest. Arbor vitae hedge. I'm assuming that is, I don't know. Vitae, V-I-T-A-E is like life. So, that's a big word for a children's book or a young adult book. You would never guess there used to be an opening in it and a gate, but once you had crawled through, you could trace great-grandfather's path zigzagging down through wild rose bushes, bayberry, sweet fern, and some stray arbor vitae trees. Arbor vitae. I wonder if that's the type of plant, perhaps. In June and July, the rose bushes were all pink with blossoms, and as we brushed through them, a cool, lemony fragrance rose all around us. If we bent down, though, where our feet had crushed grass and sweet fern and bayberry, the smells were warm and dry and spicy. At the bottom of the hill, at low tide, the smell of mud rose up and overwhelmed all the other smells. Freddie and I, very knowledgeable because Braun had taught us, that's B-R-O-N, pounced on the likeliest looking clam squirts, scraped out craters with our clam rakes, then, very carefully, so as not to break the clams, probed down with our hands and lifted them out. We washed our catch standing knee-deep in mud at the channel's edge, and usually, before starting home, had a mud fight just for fun. Back at the Haven, we would stand at the door to the side porch and shout to Grandma to come and see the surprise we had for her. She would appear suddenly out from under the big old wisteria that covered the side porch. The reason it was so big was because Grandma and her mother before her had always watered it with dishwater. That's funny. I've never heard that before. And she would throw up her hands in horror at the mud we had all over us, but she wasn't really angry. She'd get out the hose, chase after us, and squirt us until we were clean. Then we would wash the clams, and she would steam them for lunch. She always said they were the best clams she had ever eaten. It was impossible to remember anything pleasant about the Haven that didn't include Grandma. I hastily returned my thoughts to the cove. At half tide, from the top of the secret path, you could see how the North River wound in from Sewell Harbor through a waste of marsh to the foot of our hill. There it widened out into the cove. Narrowing again, it turned north, and still skirting the east side of the hill, it divided into branches, which divided again and again and sent a network of tidal brooks into the marsh, which stretched away to the north as well as the east, and in fact surrounded Haskell's Hill to the west side too. At full tide, At full tide, the river and its little branches flooded the marsh, and Haskell's Hill became a real peninsula. The narrow strip of land on which Haskell Street, coming from the town proper, ran past and a little above the cove was all that connected us up on the hill to the rest of Sewell. High tide was swimming time at the cove. We had a diving raft in the channel. My father had built it when he was a boy, and Braun kept it in repair and put it out each summer for Freddie and me. Swimming and diving were one thing I was better at than Aunt Edith. It seemed funny to me that growing up near the water, she didn't love it the way I did. I took to the water like a fish. How I soared through the air in my swans and jackknives. Like a bird, I saw the whole landscape spread beneath me, and when I came down, my head clove the water as neatly as a kingfisher's. My back dives, though, needed practice. I was always walloping the water with my shoulders and the tender part of my legs under the knee. It hurt like anything. I made an awfully big splash, too. The raft and our catboat, and even Braun's boat, which was 28 feet long, pitched like crazy, and the waves slapped against the beach. If Braun was in his boat and gave me permission, I often swam over and climbed aboard to sunbathe on the forward deck. So we're going to assume this is Braun's boat, because it looks like a 28-footer, and that's a forward deck. Braun's was a lobster boat that he had bought cheap because she was damaged. He had repaired and improved her so that he could live aboard in the summer and make money taking out summer people for fishing or excursions. It's funny how places like this often call the people that come, I know this is Cape Cod, the Hamptons, even down sort of in the Outer Banks a little bit, they call them summer people. They're people that they come every summer. So it's not like they're tourists necessarily, but they're the summer people. He'd fixed up the forward cabin with a bunk and a table and a little sink and stove and icebox. Grandma had sewed him tiny yellow curtains that she could pull over the 2 portholes. He'd built a wheelhouse just aft of the cabin with a glass windshield and side windows so he could run the boat in any weather and not get wet. Just last summer, he had bought a beautiful mariner's compass and had set it in a mahogany counter just beside the wheel. He had wired the boat himself and polished up and electrified 2 old brass riding lamps and installed them port and starboard. I don't know that any of this is showing in this picture. Aft of the wheelhouse was a roomy cockpit with benches around for people to sit on. The big new silent Liberty motor stood in a mahogany box in the center of the cockpit. And that would be in there somewhere where that person is standing. Braun had named his boat Irene after his mother, and I was disappointed that he hadn't named her after me and my grandmother and her grandmother in another beautiful ship of long ago. So there's something about Jerusha that's important. I leaned my head against the back of my seat in the train and shut my eyes, the better to picture the ship Jerusha. Great-grandfather Haskell had built her at his shipyard in the Cove, and she had sailed from Sewell to Hong Kong on her maiden voyage in 1852. She was one of the fastest ships of her time, and for 20 years, in spite of the competition of steamships, she made money in the China trade. I knew how beautiful she had been, for there were paintings of her in almost every room at the Haven. On foggy days, I liked to slip down to the Cove alone, just to imagine how the Jerusha had looked after her launching, waiting there in the Cove to be fitted and to sail off to Hong Kong. Fog blotted out the familiar shapes of the 2 boats and the rafts and the emptiness, too. My imagination supplied the Jerusha and all of the wharves and buildings and the bustle of great-grandfather Haskell's shipyard. Ox carts unloaded planks and ropes and hardware on the big wharf. At low tide, you could still find a few stumps of the old piling in the mud. A blind white horse turned the capstan. I don't know what that is. The rasping of saws and the banging of hammers mingled with the stampings of oxen and the rumbling of their carts and the shouts of the drivers outside. Sorry, guys. Having trouble because I'm not used to reading to you guys from a digital thing. I'm usually reading an actual book. Okay. Above all the noise, great-grandfather could always be heard bawling out orders, huge, aloof, and silent, her masts towering as high as Haskell's Hill. The Jerusha floated, miraculously it seemed to me, in the narrow channel of the cove. She had been launched on the full moon spring tide, and even so, had very nearly stuck fast. Everyone in Sewell had come to watch. Bets had been placed that so large a ship couldn't be launched in so small a body of water, but great-grandfather Haskell had done it. He had just given up seafaring to take over the shipyard from his father, who had sent him off at the age of 13 as a cabin boy on a Haskell-built ship. Can you imagine? You're 13 and your father goes, yeah, you're going to get a job. I'm going to send you out to sea. Bye. I can't imagine. He had become a captain before he was 40, and it was only because of his father's failing health that he left the sea. The Jerusha was one of the first ships built at the shipyard under his management. His luck and hers ran high and ran out together. The Jerusha was wrecked off Java. Orders of the shipyard got fewer. Henry Hardin robbed the safe, and that was the last straw. At the cove, the wharves and buildings rotted, while up at the house, great-grandfather raged to no purpose. Great-grandmother whined and declined, and my dear plump grandma, young and slender then, and almost pretty, well, that's rude, and almost pretty, sulked in her room and pieced a quilt ugly as sin. So not only is her grandmother almost pretty, but she pieced ugly quilts. My gosh. She told me about the quilt just last summer and had gotten it and shaken it out to show me and to air it. It was a crazy quilt and reminded me of thunderclouds slashed with lightning. It was so ugly it frightened me, and I guess it frightened Grandma too, because she said, and I remember her exact words because they were so different from the sort of things she usually said. I must look at it sometimes to remind myself of my sin from which there was no escape. She folded it and laid it on the beautiful sunshine and shadow pattern quilt we'd just smoothed over my bed. It crouched there like a toad. Ugh. I didn't want to think about that quilt or my dear Grandma, who wasn't waiting at the station this year to hug me. I jerked my head forward, thumped my feet on the floor, and opened my eyes. We were slowing down for Sewell Station. Opposite me, Freddie's face was almost hidden behind a huge, livid balloon of gum. Good for you, I said. You've really got it, but we're almost there. The train braked suddenly. The balloon, with Freddie's head behind it, lurched right into my face. The lower part of Freddie sprawled in my lap. Sewell, end of the line, called the conductor. Freddie scrambled to his feet, a strand of gum firmly attached at one end to his mouth, and at the other to the collar of my dress, stretched between us, divided into little threads which swung back and forth until they broke and attached themselves to Freddie's shirt front or the bodice of my dress. We tried to brush them away. They stuck to our hands, stretched some more, swung some more, broke, and hitched onto our chins, our noses, our eyebrows, and our hair. I looked at Freddie. He was a mess. Oh, Freddie, what will she say? Freddie's eyes widened. He began to giggle. He clapped his hand over his mouth to suppress the giggles, and his hand stuck there. I helped him pull his hand loose, and we were all stuck together again. The trellis of pink rambler roses behind the station platform slipped by, and then the station itself. Our train jerked and sputtered and dragged to a stop. There, right under our window, stood Aunt Edith. A man was pinning one of the pink rambler roses onto her white dress. Was it perhaps Braun? Hope swelled momentarily. The man turned. He was not Braun. He and Aunt Edith saw us and waved. Freddie and I wrenched ourselves apart. I'll go first. Freddie squared his shoulders. It's my fault. No. With a sweeping gesture and trailing strings of gum, I swung down the suitcase and gestured Freddie behind me. Come on. I started down the aisle. Your pocketbook! Freddie snatched it from under the seat and handed it to me. We both stuck to it. We descended the coach steps awkwardly, held together by the pocketbook. Aunt Edith came forward, smiling. As her arms enfolded us, I felt the familiar hot gush from my nose. Aunt Edith checked her embrace. Dick, she cried. Dick, she's bleeding. It's unfortunate that this man's name is Dick. It's one of her nosebleeds, said Freddie, tearing himself loose from me and jumping aside. She often gets them. She can't help it. Nothing to worry about, Edith dear. Though she spoiled your dress, said Edith's beau. Now, Jerry, don't you worry. Dr. Davis is looking after you. Just tilt your head back. A handkerchief was wadded under my nose. I was picked up bodily and deposited in Dr. Davis's fliver? F-L-I-V-V-E-R. I've seen that word before and I had no idea what it means. I'm assuming that maybe it's this car, perhaps. So what we've got here is the train, and this is Jerusha and Freddie, and I guess this is Edith, and this is her beau Dick. And I guess Aunt Edith sort of looks like she's dressed in 1920s in clothing, and he's got those oh gosh, what are those shoes? Those Oxford shoes that the saddles on them. I guess saddle Oxfords. Ah, and there's a rose. These are interesting illustrations. They, again, 1960s, 1970s, all over these types of illustrations, in my opinion. Okay. So whatever a flivver is. I will spare myself the embarrassment, which I still remember after 18 years, of the further events of that evening. It was enough to say that Grandpa, hastening out of the side door of the Haven to meet us, mistook me for my mother in the throes of a hemorrhage of the lungs. So the mother must have had tuberculosis. And that is the end of that chapter. So, let's see. Oh, we've got some comments here. Okay. Oh, Robin. Okay. So, Robin has said, lots of intel here. Thank you, Robin. I'm sorry I wasn't looking at this when I was reading. Okay. So the girl looks like she's wearing a tank top and shorts, but he looks like he's wearing a suit from that time. Okay. So the arbor vitae is a type of tree. Let's see. Oh, okay. I've seen these things before. The arbor vitae. I guess it's some kind of like evergreen situation. My grandmother had these. Yeah, my grandmother had these in front of her porch. Okay. Now we know what those are. A capstan on a ship is a vertical winch used to apply force to ropes and cables, particularly for heavy loads like anchors and mooring lines. Okay. I cannot remember what they called that now. I watched Below Deck. And it does have a different name now, I think. And it seems to me like they call it by like the brand. So like calling something a John Deere when it's a tractor, like that kind of thing. I think that's what I've heard before. Okay. A small, cheap, usually old automobile. Example, Kevin plans to keep his new convertible off the roads during the harsh cold months when streets were salted and sanding, so he's looking for a flivver or a flivver to use as a winter beater. Okay, so flivver or fliver, however you pronounce this, is basically a winter beater or a beater. Let's see, here's a picture. Okay. So, okay. Looks like a Model T, but I'm guessing we're talking about just a junky old car. And that makes sense. That was what we saw in the picture. Right there. Junky old Model T. Thanks for looking those things up, Robin. And then, yeah, we didn't have a picture of a capstan, but I'm sure capstan is not a very interesting looking thing. So, do they call it a bollard or a windlass? A windlass. Yeah. A windlass, I think, is it's like it picks up, so like if you've ever watched Below Deck or any of those, or you've ever seen anything on TV like yachts of the rich and famous, they will often have a tender, which is a small boat that kind of follows it around. And so a windlass, yeah, it comes around and it like picks up. Yeah. Okay, so windlass is horizontal. Okay, and a capstan is vertical. Okay. Ah, less deck space. Okay. Gotcha. Yeah. Later evolved to accommodate multiple capstans. Oh, interesting. So I'm guessing maybe they still do have capstans, and that's just not something that they mention so much on Below Deck. The windlass is interesting because, that's always going over there and like pulling the tender up and putting it like somewhere, that kind of thing. When they have that giant slide or those like banana things that you can ride on, they use the windlass to pick those up. So did you think this was gonna all be about like a mystery and quilts today, or did you know you were gonna learn some things about yachts? Yachts and boats, shipping boats. Well, that's what makes us smarter, is learning ridiculous little tidbits. So this seems like it's going to be a fun book. My voice is a little scratchy today. I'm sorry. I didn't take any allergy medicine this morning, so I know that's what that's all about. So I'm going to end here. We will pick up on the next chapter, which I had it right in front of me. The next chapter, I think, is Aunt Edith. Oh, I think I closed it. Okay. So the next chapter is Aunt Edith. I wish these were numbered, but we'll get by. The next chapter, I think, is getting into 1943. So, which is interesting. So 1926, a couple years before the stock market. 1943 is right at the end of, right at the end of World War II or mid-World War II. Yeah. Okay. So, and by the way, if you ever want to read this book on your own, or if you would like to maybe say read it to a child, it is available on the Internet Archive. You can check it out, which is what I did. I'm not going to say more than that because I'm not exactly reading it directly from the Internet Archive. Shh. Yes, no show on Thursday because I will be driving. And yes, Saturday, Jill and I have a stitching glitch. So I hope you will join us. That will be over on the Quilt Nerding channel on YouTube. So, and we will start at 2 p.m. Eastern. Sometimes we go until 4 or 5, sort of depends on what's going on. As hot as it's supposed to be, I don't think either of us will be rushing off to anything. So, we'll stick around for a while. All right, you guys, have a wonderful week. I hope to see you on Saturday. Actually, tomorrow, Jill and I are back in person. We've done a couple of weeks of pre-recordings because of our travel schedule independently, but we are back tomorrow. It's just a general show because we're between books. We'll be starting the next book in July, so we'll be talking about that and mention that again. So if you don't follow us there or you can't make it, of course, I hope that you're caught up on the recordings, and we'll hopefully see you then on Saturday. So have a fantastic week, guys. Stay cool. I know my North American friends are definitely feeling what I'm feeling. I don't think there was any part of the United States or southern Canada that wasn't looking like it was on fire. I hope you're not all sizzling like meat. Keep cool, be safe, hydrate. And yeah, I will either see you tomorrow or Saturday or next week. And thank you so much, Robin. I know Druid appreciates you being here to help out, and certainly I do. I don't know what I would do if I didn't have somebody to tell me that I could hear me or not, or look things up for me. So, yeah. Okay, so you had early spring weather. Yes, I saw snow from Tahoe and someplace else. It might have been Donner Pass. So that's insane. Robin is normally got the crazy weather this time of year with the heat. She's got some spring weather. I mean, what the hell? But I think, again, we're all warm. All warm. And, the thing is, you can't wear a quilt when you're that warm. In the winter, you can. But you can't take off but so many clothes, and then you become socially unacceptable. So, all right, guys, take care. I will see you soon. Much love. Thank you so much. I couldn't do this without you. I wouldn't want to do it without you. So, take care. Mwah!